Mark hadn't slept in 72 hours, not since he brought the map home. That's what he called it, the map. But the thing sitting on our dining room table poisoning the air wasn't paper. It wasn't a map to gold or buried history or anything clean. It was a dense, complex thing of interlocking bronze rings, like an astrolabe beaten flat, and stretched, vellum-like skin. The skin, taut and yellowed, was covered in sigils that looked less like writing and more like surgical scars. They seemed to shift, to rearrange themselves into new, nauseating patterns when I wasn't looking directly at them. It smelled. That was the worst part of that first night. The object, I couldn't call it a map, exuded a cold, metallic odor, like ozone before a lightning strike, layered over the thick, wet smell of soil. Not garden soil. This was the smell of soil from deep down, the kind that never sees the sun, where roots rot and things decompose in the dark. "I found it in the wall," Mark had said, his voice hushed with a reverence that terrified me. He was a land surveyor, a man of logic, GPS coordinates, and laser-precise measurements. He'd been assigned to inspect the foundations of the old municipal building downtown, the one slated for demolition. It was just there, Alara, tucked behind a support beam, wrapped in oilcloth, like it was waiting. Now he was lost. I sat on the sofa, clutching a mug of tea I hadn't touched, the television muted. It was 3:17 a.m. The only light in the house came from the kitchen, casting Mark in a sharp, sterile silhouette. He stood over the map, perfectly still, his head cocked to one side as if listening to a faint transmission. "Mark," I whispered. My voice sounded thin, intrusive. "Please, come to bed." He didn't turn. His shoulders, usually broad and relaxed, were rigid. "It's talking." My blood went cold. "It's bronze and skin, Mark. It's not talking. It's just old. It's creeping you out." "No." His voice was flat, devoid of its usual warmth. "You just can't hear it. The frequency is very low. You have to be attuned." He reached out, his fingers tracing one of the raised, scar-like sigils. I watched, my stomach clenching as his fingertip brushed the vellum. It seemed to grow damp beneath his touch. "What's it saying?" I asked, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. Mark was quiet for a long time. The house settled around us. The refrigerator hummed, a car passed on the distant highway. When he finally spoke, his words were barely audible. "It says it's thirsty." I stood up, the mug clattering against the coffee table. "That's it. I'm putting it in the garage." As I moved toward the dining room, a wave of cold air hit me. It wasn't a draft, it was a physical presence radiating from the artifact. The smell of damp earth intensified, catching in the back of my throat. Mark turned, and for the first time, I saw his eyes in the full glare of the kitchen light. They were bright. Too bright. His pupils were dilated to black, bottomless pools, reflecting the room in distorted miniature. He wasn't just looking at me, he was looking through me. "We can't move it," he said. His voice was calm, but it was the calm of a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. "It needs to acclimatize." Acclimatize to what? "Mark, it's a thing. It's a horrible, smelly thing, and it's making you weird." "It's making me clear," he countered. He gestured to the object. "All my life I've used tools to measure the world. Lasers, sonar, ground-penetrating radar. All of it just guessing. Trying to see through the noise." He ran both hands over the map's surface, a gesture that was almost a caress. "This is the noise. This is the source. It doesn't show you the location, Alara. It sings the location. It's a cadence." He began to hum. It was the single most unsettling sound I had ever heard. It wasn't a tune. It was two notes, a low, resonant drone that seemed to come from his chest, not his throat. It vibrated in the air, a physical sensation that I felt in my teeth. The glass of water on the counter rippled, concentric circles disturbing its surface. "Stop it," I pleaded, pressing my hands to my ears. The sound was cold and it made my vision swim. "Mark, you're scaring me." He stopped. The abrupt silence was as jarring as the noise had been. He looked down at the map, then at his hands as if surprised to find them there. The manic brightness in his eyes faded, replaced by a familiar, weary confusion. "Alara? What time is it?" "It's almost 4, I said, my voice shaking. "You've been standing there for hours." He blinked, disorientation washing over his features. He looked at the map, and for a second I saw a flash of the same repulsion I felt. He snatched his hands back. "God, it's cold," he mumbled, rubbing his arms. "It feels like I've been sleeping standing up." Relief washed through me, so potent it made me dizzy. "Come on, let's go to bed." We'll take this thing to the university in the morning. Get it appraised. Get it out of the house." He nodded, allowing me to lead him by the hand, stumbling like a sleepwalker. He leaned on me, his weight suddenly immense. As we climbed the stairs, he paused. "Did I say anything? While I was down there?" I hesitated. "You said it was thirsty." Mark stopped, his hand tightening on the banister. He stared into the darkness of the hallway. "No," he whispered, a new dawning horror in his voice. "It wasn't thirsty. It was hungry." He collapsed onto the bed, falling into a sleep so deep it was almost a coma, his breathing heavy and rattling. I did not sleep. I sat in the armchair in our bedroom, watching the doorway, listening. The house was quiet again, but the silence felt wrong. It felt strained. It felt like the hush in a forest when a predator is near. And beneath the silence I could still smell it. The cold, metallic tang of ozone, and the rich, patient, suffocating smell of the deep earth, waiting. The man who woke up the next morning was not my husband. It was Mark in form. He wore his skin, his clothes, he used his voice. But the fog of the previous night had not lifted. It had simply settled, sinking deep into his bones. The man who had collapsed in exhaustion was gone, replaced by a version of Mark that was hollowed out, refilled with a terrible, vibrating energy. He didn't go to work. When I came downstairs, coffee in hand, I found him already at the dining room table, dressed in his work clothes, a pressed khaki shirt and sturdy boots, as if ready to leave. But he was just sitting there, staring at the map. The map, which I had sworn I would move, was still the centerpiece of the room, dominating the space. "Mark, you're going to be late," I said. He looked up, his eyes clear but distant, like a man looking at a familiar street through the wrong end of a telescope. "I sent in the report. The foundation is stable." "What report? You haven't even written it." "I did," he said, his voice quiet, reasonable. "I did it last night, after you went to bed. Mark, you were asleep. You were practically comatose." He gave me a small, patient smile that didn't touch his eyes. "I was processing. The map, it clarifies things. It cuts through the static." He tapped his temple. "All the noise, Alara. The emails, the deadlines, the traffic. It's all just distraction. The map is helping me focus." "Focus on what?" "The cadence," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He turned back to the map. His obsession was no longer frantic. It had become methodical, academic. He'd brought his work tools home. Precision calipers, a magnifying lamp, even a digital voltmeter lay scattered on the table. He was measuring the distance between the bronze rings, taking notes in his surveyor's logbook. But his notes weren't measurements. They were just symbols. He was mimicking the sigils from the map's skin, drawing them over and over, page after page, the lines dark and forceful. He stopped eating. I made toast. It sat untouched, growing cold. I made lunch. He waved it away, annoyed by the interruption. By evening, the only thing he'd consumed was water, and he drank it in huge, gulping draughts as if trying to extinguish a fire. The humming had returned. It was no longer a distressed, unconscious sound. It was deliberate. That low, two-note drone filled the house. It wasn't loud, but it was pervasive. It was a sound you felt more than heard, a cold vibration that lived in the floorboards and rattled the filings in my teeth. I found myself humming it in the kitchen, catching myself with a jolt of horror. The sound was an infection. I tried to escape it. I went into the garden, but I could still hear it through the closed windows. I turned on the television, but the drone slid underneath the actors' voices, making them sound tinny and false. The house felt cold. The thermostat read 72 degrees, but I was shivering. That night, I woke up alone. The space beside me in the bed was empty, the sheet cold. I knew immediately where he was. I found him in the study. He had taken the map off the dining table and set it up on his drafting board, angled under a bright white lamp. He was leaning over it, whispering. It was not a one-sided conversation. He would speak, a low and guttural monotone, and then he would pause, head tilted, listening intently. A small, satisfied smile would touch his lips, and he would whisper again. "Who are you talking to?" I asked from the doorway. Mark spun around, his movement fast and jittery, unnatural. He hadn't heard me approach over the sound of his own humming. He stared at me, his eyes wide, his expression unreadable. "I'm clarifying the terms," he said. "The terms of what?" "The exchange. It's a very old contract. It's been waiting a long time for a signatory." He turned back to the map. He reached out and, with a terrifying tenderness, traced the largest of the scar-like sigils. I watched, my throat tightening as his finger moved across the dry, ancient vellum. When he pulled his hand back, his fingertip was black. It wasn't ink. It wasn't soot. It was a thick, moist, oily residue. It looked exactly like the rich, dark soil from the compost bin, the kind that's full of worms and decay. It hadn't been on the map a moment before. He had drawn it out. "Mark, what is that?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Wash your hands." He looked at the black smear on his finger with something approaching wonder. "It's a gift," he said. He didn't wipe it. Instead, he slowly, deliberately raised his finger to his mouth and licked it clean. I gagged, stumbling back. "Oh God, Mark. Don't do that. That thing, it's filthy, it's grounding," he said. His voice was deeper now, the two-note hum weaving itself into his words. "It's pure. It's of the earth. Not the surface. The real earth." He looked at me and the patient, distant man was gone. In his place was a zealot. "You don't understand, do you, Alara? We live on a crust. A thin, fragile shell over the real thing. We spend our lives walking on it, building on it, never knowing what's right under our feet. This isn't a map to a treasure. It's a map of a treasure. It's a diagram of the stillness." "The stillness," I repeated, my mind numb. "The voice below. The one that's been waiting. It's trapped and it's so hungry." He smiled, a wide, joyless expression that showed his teeth. "And I'm going to feed it." He walked past me, brushing my shoulder. The point of contact was icy, a cold that seeped through my robe. He went into the kitchen. I heard the clatter of our heavy-duty flashlights, the zipping of his field bag. He was preparing. I ran to the dining room. I had to get rid of it. I had to burn it. I grabbed the map. The bronze rings were shockingly cold, the vellum damp. The smell of ozone and wet earth flooded my senses, choking me. I held it, my arms straining. It was heavier than it looked, impossibly dense, as if it were weighted with lead. "I wouldn't," Mark said from the doorway. His voice was calm, but the hum was gone. The silence was worse. "It's attached to me now, Alara," he said, zipping up his jacket. "And I'm attached to it. If you hurt it, you hurt me. And it will hurt you back." He picked up his keys. "I have to go. I have to find the first marker." "The first marker?" "Mark, it's the middle of the night." "What are you talking about?" "It's a perimeter," he said, pocketing the map. The dense object folded impossibly, shrinking like a piece of paper as he pushed it into his jacket. "It's like a utility survey. You have to find the connection points before you can access the main line." He opened the back door, letting in a rush of cold, damp air. "Where are you going?" I cried, following him onto the patio. He paused at the edge of the darkness, his face turned toward the silent, sleeping houses of our neighbors. "I'm just going to check the grid," Mark said, his voice now a perfect blend of his own and that low, resonant vibration. "The map says we're already part of it. It's closer than we thought." I followed him. What else could I do? Call the police? Tell them my husband, a man respected in his field, was taking a walk because a map told him to? I grabbed my car keys, slid my bare feet into rain boots and ran out the door. The night air was heavy and still, holding the dampness of the earth close to the ground. Our subdivision, usually a comfort of manicured lawns and sleeping families, felt alien. The sodium streetlights cast a sickly orange-gray glow on everything, making the familiar houses look like empty husks. Mark was already half a block ahead, walking with a long, purposeful stride. He wasn't staggering like a drunk or hesitating like a sleepwalker. He was being pulled. "Mark, stop. Where are you going?" I shouted, my voice sounding shrill in the silence. He didn't turn or slow down. "I'm checking the perimeter," he called back, his voice too loud, too resonant for the quiet street. "The flow is sluggish. It needs to be opened." I ran to catch up, my breath pluming in the cold. He wasn't using a flashlight. He navigated the pre-dawn darkness as if it were bright daylight. He held nothing in his hands, no map, no tools. The map was in his jacket pocket, but I knew with a sickening certainty that he didn't need to look at it anymore. He had memorized it. Or perhaps it had memorized him. He led me 3 streets over to a part of the neighborhood I rarely walked, Sycamore Lane. It was a cul-de-sac, a perfect circle of identical homes facing a small landscaped island. It was the very picture of suburban security. Mark ignored the houses. He walked directly to the end of the street, to the grassy easement between 2 properties. There, half hidden by overgrown ornamental shrubs, sat a large, pale green utility box. It was a standard municipal transformer, humming with the quiet 60-cycle current that powered our lives. "This is it," he whispered. He sounded satisfied. He sounded like he was home. "Mark, that's a power box. You'll be electrocuted. Get away from it." He ignored me, pushing through the wet bushes. He stood before the metal box. It was scarred with rust and graffiti, cold and damp with dew. He didn't try to open it. He just placed his right hand flat against the center of the metal door, right over the high-voltage warning sticker. He closed his eyes, and he began to hum. This was not the tentative, exploratory drone from the first night. This was a sound of intent. The two-note cadence came from deep in his chest, a powerful, subsonic vibration. It wasn't just a sound, it was a frequency. I felt it in my skull. The transformer's own low hum began to change. It faltered, the steady current seeming to fight against the noise Mark was making. The streetlights overhead flickered, buzzed, and then dimmed, their orange glow fading to a weak, brownish pulse. "Mark, stop it. You're breaking it," I yelled, grabbing his arm. It was like grabbing a steel girder set in concrete. He was immovable. His skin, even through his jacket, was shockingly, painfully cold. "It's not breaking," he said, his eyes still closed. His voice was a layered rasp, his own words entwined with the deep hum. "It's connecting. This is a node. A weak one. But it's connected to the water. It's connected to the grid. It's all one body." He pressed his hand harder against the metal. A thin, spider-webbing frost began to creep from under his palm, spreading across the damp green paint. It was impossible. It was August. The air was humid. But the frost bloomed, brilliant white in the dim light. He took a deep, shuddering breath and the hum stopped. The silence that crashed down was absolute. The transformer's normal buzz was gone. The streetlights were completely out. The cul-de-sac was plunged into a primal darkness, lit only by the distant, cold light of the moon. Mark dropped his hand. He turned to me, and in the faint moonlight I saw his face. The man I knew was gone. His eyes were wide, luminous, and utterly vacant. He was a vessel, beautifully empty, filled with a purpose that was not his own. He smiled, a slow, gentle curve of the lips. "There," he said. His voice was soft, sated. "That's better. What did you do?" I opened the line. "It's closer than I thought." He looked past me toward the house as if he could see the map pulsing in his study. Then he looked down at the grass under his feet. "It's thirsty. Not for water. For attention. Mark, please," I begged, tears of cold and terror streaming down my face. "Let's go home. Let's call someone. Dr. Evans." "He can't help," Mark said, his tone one of gentle pity. "He's all static. He lives on the crust." He brushed past me, his cold shoulder grazing mine. "We need to go home. There's so much to do. The map is very specific about the next phase." He started walking back, leaving me alone in the dark, frosted silence. I looked back at the utility box. It was dead. The frost on its surface had already begun to melt, dripping dark, oily-looking water onto the grass. As I followed him home, the first birds began to sing, a tentative, nervous chirping. They sounded terrified. And for the first time, I felt a new sensation, a low-level thrum under my feet. It was faint, like a heavy truck idling miles away. Or like a massive, sleeping heart, just beginning to stir in the deep, cold earth beneath our street. It's been 3 days since the transformer. 3 days of Mark's vibrant, humming health, and 3 days of our house's slow, agonizing death. The smell was the first, most constant assault. The odor of damp, compacted earth and cold ozone was no longer confined to Mark's study or the map. It had broken containment. It was in the walls, in the vents, in the plumbing. I'd run the faucets and the water would come out smelling of rust and deep, sunless soil. I'd open the linen closet and the scent would roll out, thick and cloying, clinging to the clean towels. The house was being marinated in the essence of the thing Mark had awakened. Then came the soil. I found the first pile in the corner of the living room by the window. It was a perfect, neat circle, no bigger than a silver dollar, composed of a dark, almost black loam. It was moist. I assumed, with a desperate lurch of normalcy, that Mark had tracked it in with his boots. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a paper towel, and returned. I bent to wipe it up. The soil didn't wipe. The moment the paper towel touched it, the dirt smeared, not like mud but like thick, black grease or wet soot. I recoiled, disgusted. The smear was oily, unnatural, and left a cold residue on the hardwood floor. I scrubbed at it, my knuckles turning white. The harder I scrubbed, the more it spread until, with a final, frustrating wipe, it wasn't gone. It had vanished. It had soaked into the sealed, varnished hardwood, leaving nothing behind but a faint, dark stain, as if the wood itself were rotting from that one spot. And the spot was cold. I pressed my palm to it and it felt like I was touching a block of ice. I found another pile an hour later. It was on the white marble of the kitchen counter, next to the coffee maker. A perfect, dark circle, glistening with moisture. I didn't touch it. I stared at it, my heart hammering until I couldn't look anymore. When I came back, it was gone, leaving only that same cold, dark stain, a circular shadow that the marble had absorbed. They were offerings, or droppings. I didn't know which was worse. The final, unforgivable violation came that night. I was exhausted, sleeping in fits and starts, my dreams filled with the low two-note hum. I rolled over, seeking the cool side of the pillow, and my cheek brushed against something granular. I snapped awake, clawing at the lamp. In the sudden light, I saw it. On the white cotton of my pillowcase, inches from where I had been breathing, was a third perfect pile of black, damp earth. I screamed. I fell out of the bed, crab-walking backward until I hit the wall, my skin crawling. I was rubbing my face, convinced it was on me, in my hair. Mark, sleeping soundly beside me, didn't even stir. His sleep was as deep and cold as the soil itself. While the house was being invaded, the life in it was being drained. My plants were the first to go. I had a row of bright, healthy orchids on the windowsill. The day after the transformer, their purple and white blossoms turned a bruised, sickly brown. The day after that, their thick, green leaves became black, brittle, and desiccated. They hadn't wilted, they had been emptied. They crumbled to dust at my touch. The ficus tree in the corner, which I had nurtured for 5 years, dropped all its leaves in a single, silent cascade, leaving a skeleton of bare branches. The house was dying. But Mark was thriving. He was a terrible, beautiful mirror image of the decay around him. The man who, a week ago, was pale and stressed from work, was now the picture of health. His skin was clear, almost translucent, stretched taut over his bones. His eyes were a startling, vibrant blue, clear and sharp. He moved with a new, fluid grace. He was radiating a cold, magnetic energy. He was a parasite's perfect host. I confronted him in the kitchen, holding the dead, brittle leaf of the ficus. He was at the sink, drinking another huge glass of water, his hum a quiet, contented rumble in his chest. "The plants are dead, Mark," I said, my voice shaking. "All of them. The house. It smells like a grave. Don't you see what's happening?" He finished the water, set the glass down, and turned to me. He smiled, and the smile was full of a genuine, uncomplicated pity that made my blood run cold. "They were living on the surface," he said, his voice smooth. "Things on the surface are temporary. They're not rooted in the real thing." He reached out as if to comfort me and stroked my cheek. His hand was freezing. It wasn't the cool, dry skin of a normal person. It was the deep, penetrating, damp cold of the map. The cold of the utility box. The cold of the soil on my pillow. It was a cold that didn't come from a lack of heat, but from an active, energy-draining source. I flinched, pulling away from him. His smile didn't falter. "It's all right, Alara. You're just not used to the stillness. You're still part of the noise. What's it making you do?" "It's not making me do anything," he said, his vibrant eyes holding mine. "It's showing me. The next marker is a reservoir. A place of collection. It needs to be purified. Purified. Fed," he corrected, his voice dropping to that layered, two-note resonance. "It's been so hungry for so long. And tonight we're going to give it a feast." The hum was no longer a sound. It was the atmosphere of the house. It was the air I breathed. Mark's two-note drone had become constant, an unending vibration that saturated the drywall and thrummed in my bones. It was the soundtrack to my life, and it was breaking my mind. A persistent ice-pick migraine had taken up residence behind my right eye, pulsing in time with his cadence. Sleep was impossible. Every time I drifted off, the hum would drill into my subconscious, jolting me awake with a gasp. I was living in a tuning fork, and Mark was the one striking it over and over. On the second night after the plants died, I woke to a silence so profound, so sudden, that it was more alarming than the noise. The hum was gone. The house felt dead, empty. The pressure in my skull vanished, leaving an aching, hollow void. "Mark?" I whispered into the darkness. The sheets beside me were cold. He was gone. I stumbled out of bed, my head swimming. The silence was a relief, but it was also a warning. The hum was his anchor. Without it, where had he drifted? I grabbed the car keys, my movements frantic. The digital clock on the oven glowed, 2:44 a.m. I found him at the community pool. It was a quarter mile from our house, a place of bright summer memories, The smell of chlorine, the shriek of children, the warmth of the sun on concrete. Now, in the dead of night, closed for the season, it was a concrete graveyard. The chain-link fence was locked, but the gate stood wide open, its latch broken. I saw him immediately. He was in the deep end. The pool had been drained, a vast, sloping basin of pale blue concrete, cracked and stained with autumn leaves. It was lit by a single, flickering security light. Mark was at the bottom, standing over the main drain, a dark, circular grate. He was not alone. Arranged around him in a neat semicircle were a dozen large, torn-open bags. Rock salt, lime pellets and high-nitrogen fertilizer. The kind used to burn weeds or, in massive quantities, to make explosives. The chemical stench, sharp and acrid, burned my nose even from the fence. "Mark!" I shouted, rattling the gate. "What are you doing? Get out of there!" He didn't look up. He was busy. He was chanting. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language I knew. It was a rhythmic, guttural cascade of sounds that scraped the air. As he chanted, he worked. He ripped open another 40-pound bag of fertilizer and, with a grunt of effort, began pouring the white and blue pellets directly into the drain. "Mark, stop. That's poison. You'll contaminate the water table." "Exactly," he boomed, his voice echoing off the concrete walls of the pool. The sound was distorted, amplified, layered with that sickening low resonance. "The pipes. They all connect. The pool drains, the sewers, the aquifers. It's all one vast circulatory system. The real body." He was feeding it. He was pouring thousands of pounds of concentrated chemicals into the town's water lines, a direct injection into the earth. "It needs the salt," he chanted, tearing open a bag of rock salt and pouring it after the fertilizer. "The salts and the nitrates. It needs to scour the pipes. It needs to clean the arteries." He was moving with a manic, feverish strength, hoisting the heavy bags as if they were pillows. I climbed the fence, my boots scraping, and dropped into the shallow end. The concrete was slick with damp, rotting leaves. "This is insane," I pleaded, walking down the slope toward him. "This is a crime, Mark. You'll poison people. You'll poison us." He stopped, the empty bag dropping from his hand. He turned to me. His face, lit from above by the harsh security light, was a mask of ecstatic purpose. He was sweating despite the cold, but the sweat on his brow seemed dark, thick like the oily soil from our house. "It purifies, Ilara," he said, his voice gentle. "It's an antiseptic. It's cleaning out the other life. The surface life. The noise." "What other life? You mean people? You mean children?" "This pool. They are temporary," he snapped, the patience vanishing. "They are a rash on the skin. The stillness is eternal. It's waking up and it is famished." He gestured to the drain, a priest at his altar. "This is the second marker. The first was the nerve center. This is the mouth." He picked up the last bag, pelleted lime, and held it high. "A feast," he roared and dumped it in. A cloud of white dust billowed up, choking me. I turned and fled, scrambling up the slope of the shallow end, coughing, my eyes burning. I hauled myself over the fence and ran, not stopping until I was inside my car, locking the doors. Mark remained in the basin, a dark silhouette in a pit of his own making, humming his two-note song of triumph to the poisoned earth. I made it home, but the sickness found me. I woke the next morning on the bathroom floor, my cheek pressed against the cold tile. My body was at war with itself. A violent, cramping nausea had me doubled over, but it was a dry, sterile sickness. I was vomiting, but nothing came up. It felt like my body was trying to expel itself, to turn itself inside out to get rid of a poison that wasn't in my stomach, but in my cells. I dragged myself to the phone and called Dr. Evans. He saw me immediately. He drew blood. He checked my vitals. He palpated my stomach. He found nothing. "Ilara," he said, his brow furrowed, "you're perfectly healthy. Your blood work is pristine. Blood pressure is normal. There's no sign of infection, no food poisoning, nothing." "I'm not healthy," I whispered, clutching the thin paper gown. I feel like I'm being leeched." "Leeched?" He forced a small laugh. "Maybe you're just reacting to Mark's stress. He's been working too hard, you said. Sympathetic anxiety, perhaps." I looked at his kind, useless face. He was a good man. He was a man of the crust. As I left the clinic, the receptionist handed me a cup of water. "Stay hydrated," she said, smiling. I took the cup. The water was clear, cold. I raised it to my lips and took a sip. It tasted of salt. It tasted of ammonia and rust. I spat it onto the beige carpet of the waiting room, a dark, chemical stain. The receptionist stared, her smile frozen. I ran out gagging. The town's water was already tainted. The feast had begun and I had just taken my first sip. I was trapped. I couldn't drink the water, I couldn't breathe the air, I couldn't trust the man I'd married. The house had become a mausoleum, a cold, damp tomb that smelled of dark earth and chemicals. The sickness was a constant, low-level thrum in my gut, a cramping hollowness that echoed Mark's two-note hum. Mark, meanwhile, was radiant. The feeding at the pool had energized him. He spent his days in the study, locked in, communing with the map. His humming was louder now, more complex. It had developed harmonics, secondary notes that vibrated at the edge of my hearing, making my vision blur and my migraines sing. He was becoming a broadcast and I was a captive audience. I was being hollowed out while he was being filled up. Desperation is a key. It unlocks parts of the mind you'd rather keep closed. I needed an ally. I needed someone who didn't live on the crust. I thought of Dr. Alastair Finch. He'd been my most eccentric professor in college, a man dismissed by the history department as a brilliant, unstable crank. His focus was pre-colonial psychogeography and local indigenous folklore, which he treated not as myth but as fact. He was obsessed with the idea that certain locations had a sapient memory that predated human settlement. We'd all thought he was fascinating, charismatic, and completely mad. Now he was my only hope. While Mark was in one of his deep, humming trances, I crept into the study. The map was laid out on his desk. The sight of it made my stomach heave. It was glistening. The vellum-like skin was taut and dewy, its sigils looking less like scars and more like fresh, weeping incisions. The smell of ozone and wet soil was so thick, I had to cover my mouth to keep from gagging. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely operate my phone. I didn't dare touch the map. I just held the phone over it, the camera lens struggling to focus on the shifting, nauseating patterns. The symbols seemed to writhe under the phone's light. Click. I took 5, 6, 7 pictures, praying one was clear. I ran from the room, slamming the door, and locked myself in the bathroom, the one room that still felt partially mine. I attached the clearest photo to an email. Subject: Urgent historical artifact? Need your expertise. Dear Professor Finch, I hope this email finds you well. My name is Alara Vance, formerly Hayes. I was in your Myths of the Valley seminar in 2012. I'm writing because my husband found something, an artifact, and it's having a very strange effect. I know this is your field. I've attached a photo of some of the symbols. Any idea what this is? Please. I'm very worried, Alara. I hit send. My heart was hammering. I waited, expecting to hear back in a day or a week or never. My phone rang in my hand less than 60 seconds later. The caller ID was blocked. I answered, my throat tight. Hello? Mrs. Vance? Alara? This is Alastair Finch. Where did you get that picture? His voice was not the booming, eccentric lecturer's voice I remembered. It was a dry, terrified rasp. My husband, I stammered, sinking onto the bath mat. He's a surveyor. He found it in the wall of the old municipal building. I heard a sharp, brittle sound, like he dropped his phone or knocked over a glass. Then heavy, ragged breathing. Oh God. No, not there. Of course it was there. The Stillwater Point. They built the town hall right on top of it. Fools. Arrogant, blind fools. Professor? What is it? What's the Stillwater Point? It's not a what, Mrs. Vance, it's a who. Or an it. A consciousness. A sapient hunger. The indigenous tribes, the ones who lived here before the settlers. They didn't live here. They lived around here. They knew better. They called the whole basin the place that waits and eats. They had stories of hunters who got too close, who'd be taken by the soil. They'd be found weeks later, miles away, perfectly preserved, desiccated, hollow. My hand flew to my stomach, to the cramping, hollow sickness. Hollow? The symbols, he said, his voice dropping to a frantic whisper. You must understand. That is not a map. Not in the way you think. You don't read it. It reads you. Mark said it was a contract. I whispered, the memory of the black soil on his fingertip flashing in my mind. It is. Finch hissed. It's a lure. A trap. A piece of itself it cast off, waiting for a sensitive mind to touch it, to attune to it, as you said. Those sigils, Alara, they aren't instructions. They aren't a guide to a treasure. His voice cracked, thick with a terror so pure it vibrated through the phone. They are warding sigils. They're a lock. They're a diagram of the prison, and they were put there by the thing itself as a challenge. It's a keyhole disguised as a puzzle. It's begging to be unlocked. And your husband, oh God, your husband, he's not finding it. He's not following it. I was weeping now, silent tears of cold dread. What is he doing, Professor? He's unlocking it, child, he almost screamed. He's not the surveyor. He is the survey. He's the key. He's turning himself, piece by piece, into the one thing that can open the door from the outside. What do I do? I pleaded. He's changing. He's feeding it. The pool, the transformer, he's cold and the house is full of soil. Soil? Oh no. No. It's manifesting. It's breaching. The containment is failing. He was panting. You have to destroy the map. Now, Alara. Not with fire. That won't work. It's not of this surface, as you put it. You need salt. Fire. You need to ground it fatally. Submerge it in salt water. Drive iron railroad spikes through it. You have to break the connection. He told me, I sobbed. He told me if I heard it, I heard him. A long, terrible silence stretched over the line, filled only by Dr. Finch's ragged breathing. Alara, he said, his voice suddenly dreadfully calm. I'm so sorry, but you have to make a choice. The man you married, he's already gone. He's just the shell. He's the first marker. You are not saving him by letting this continue. You are sacrificing everyone else to the thing that's wearing his skin. The line went dead. I sat on the cold tile, the phone in my lap. The hum from the study, which had been a steady drone, suddenly stopped. The silence was absolute. Then, from the other side of the bathroom door, I heard a new sound. A soft, wet scraping. I looked at the bottom of the door. A small, dark pile of black, glistening soil was being pushed through the crack, forming a perfect circular offering on the white tile floor. A second later, Mark's voice, layered and cold as the grave, slid under the door. Who were you talking to, Alara? You're interrupting our work. That's very, very rude. The soil at the base of the door stopped moving. The scraping ceased. There was only the thick, suffocating silence and Mark's question hanging in the air, cold and sharp as a shard of ice. My terror was so absolute, it crystallized. It became a hard, sharp thing in my chest. Dr. Finch's words echoed in the ringing silence. The man you married, he's already gone. If he was gone, I wasn't confronting my husband. I was confronting the thing that had replaced him. And I would not let it win. I stood up, my legs shaking. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. Mark was standing right there, his back to me. He was facing the study. He didn't turn. You've been making calls, he said. His voice was flat, but the underlying two-note hum was agitated, a rippling, angry vibration. You're bringing new noise into the house. It doesn't like the noise. Where are you going, Mark? I demanded, my voice raw. To the garage. We need the tools. The next marker is significant. It's the main antenna. It requires a more permanent adjustment. He started walking. I didn't follow. I ran. I ran to the kitchen. Finch had said salt. Salt and iron. I grabbed the largest canister of coarse sea salt from the pantry. Iron. I fumbled in the utility drawer, my fingers closing around the heavy, cast iron meat tenderizer. It was heavy. It was iron. Would have to do. I burst into the garage. The automatic light flickered on, illuminating a scene of chilling, methodical preparation. Mark was at his workbench. The air was thick with the smell of machine oil and a sharp, metallic tang, cutting through the pervasive odor of damp earth. He wasn't just gathering tools, he was preparing them. He had a heavy-duty shovel, not a garden spade but a trenching shovel with a thick wooden handle and a sharp, pointed steel head, clamped in the bench vise. He was working on its edge with a whetstone, the shing-shing-shing of the stone on metal slicing through the silence. He was sharpening a shovel. He was sharpening it like it was an axe. Beside the shovel lay two splitting mauls and a long iron crowbar. Mark, stop, I said, advancing. I held the salt canister in one hand, the iron tenderizer hidden behind my back in the other. It's just maintenance, Alara, he said, not looking up from his work. The rhythmic scraping was hypnotic, terrifying. Shing, shing, shing. The tools have to be clean. They have to be ready. I spoke to someone. A professor. He knows what that map is. Mark paused. He slowly, deliberately placed the whetstone on the bench. He was still. A professor? More noise. More. Insects buzzing on the crust. He said it's not a map, it's a lock. He said it's a prison, Mark. And you're not finding a treasure. You're letting the prisoner out. He turned. His face was calm. His bright, clear eyes held mine with an expression of profound, paternal disappointment. You think so small, he whispered. Prison. Treasure. These are human words. They're noise. What's coming is a recalibration. The world is unbalanced. It's all surface. It's all thin. He ran a thumb along the newly sharpened edge of the shovel. A bead of his own blood welled up, dark and thick. He looked at it, then licked it away just as he had licked the soil from his finger. "This," he said, tapping the shovel, "will help. The antenna, it's the spire. It's the needle. We're going to use it to broadcast the new cadence to the whole valley. We're going to invite everyone to the stillness." "No. I won't let you." I brought the meat tenderizer out, holding it up like a weapon. "The man I married is gone. You're just the shell." For the first time, a flicker of genuine emotion crossed his features. Irritation. "The shell?" he said, his voice dropping, the two-note hum becoming a hostile growl. He wasn't a shell. He was a vacancy. He was an empty room begging for a tenant. He wanted this. He was chosen. He was sick. He was stressed. "You're a parasite and I'm getting you out." I lunged not at him but at the map. It was lying on the concrete floor near his field bag, pulsating with a faint oily light. I raised the salt canister, ready to pour it, to break the connection as Finch had said. I never made it. He moved. It wasn't a human speed. He didn't rush, he teleported. One moment he was at the bench 10 feet away. The next he was in front of me, his hand closed around my wrist. The cold was absolute. It was not a lack of heat, it was a sucking void. It felt as if my bones were flash freezing. The pain was excruciating. I screamed and dropped the salt canister. It clattered to the floor, spilling a white circle around our feet. "You're interrupting," he said. His voice, it wasn't his. It was a composite. His own words were there, but they were woven into a deeper, slower, churning sound. The sound of stones grinding together, of earth shifting in the deep dark. It was the voice of the stillness, and it was using my husband's throat. "I won't let you," I sobbed, swinging the iron meat tenderizer with my free hand. He caught it. He didn't block it. He just caught it, his fingers closing around the iron head, stopping its momentum instantly. The sound of the impact was a dull, final thud. He held me there, his grip on my wrist unbreakable, my other hand still clutching the weapon he had neutralized. "It's rude to interrupt," he said, the layered voice vibrating through me, making my teeth ache. "We have been so patient. We have waited." He shoved me. It was not a human push. It was a concussive force, an explosion of kinetic energy. I flew. I didn't stumble, I was airborne. My back slammed into the garage wall, hitting the particle board shelving. Tools, paint cans, and boxes of nails rained down on me. I collapsed to the concrete, the air driven from my lungs, my vision tunneling to a single bright point of pain. I lay in the wreckage, gasping, helpless. Mark hadn't even looked at me. He was already kneeling by the map, gently brushing the stray grains of spilled salt off its surface, cooing to it in that guttural, non-human language. He carefully folded the map and slid it into his bag. He picked up the sharpened shovel and the crowbar. He walked to the door leading out of the garage, then paused. He turned, his silhouette framed against the darkness of the side yard. His eyes, glowing faintly in the dim garage, found me in the debris. "We are almost ready to meet," the layered voice said, full of a cold, placid joy. "Don't follow. The final marker is not for you. You're static, and you are no longer invited." He stepped out, leaving the door open, and was instantly swallowed by the night. Pain brought me back. A sharp, radiating agony from my spine where I had hit the shelves. I lay on the cold concrete of the garage for a full minute, breathing in the dust and the spilled, acidic smell of paint thinner. The world was a blurry, humming mess. Sacrificing everyone else. Finch's words were the only thing stronger than the pain. He was right. Mark was gone. But the thing wearing his skin was going to broadcast the new cadence. It was going to invite the whole valley. I dragged myself up, using the workbench for leverage. My car keys were still in my pocket. Every part of me screamed to stay down, to hide, to let the monster go. But I was the only one who knew. I was the last piece of noise left in his world. I fell into the driver's seat of my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. I pulled out of the driveway, my tires squealing. The sky was at war. A massive thunderstorm, which had been threatening all day, had finally broken, rolling in from the hills with a sudden, violent intensity. The air was no longer just damp, it was charged, electric. The smell of ozone was real now, thick and sharp, a tangible twin to the smell of the map. Wind lashed the trees, and the first fat, heavy drops of rain began to smear my windshield. I knew where he was going. The main broadcast tower. It was the tallest structure in the county, a skeletal javelin of steel planted on the ridge overlooking our town. It was our connection to the outside world, our internet, our cell service, our television. It was the town's highest, most prominent nerve. I pushed the car, racing the storm. The wipers fought against the deluge. The sky was a strobe light flicker of sheet lightning, illuminating the writhing black clouds. I saw his work truck. It was parked, or rather abandoned, at the mouth of the gravel service road that led up the ridge. He'd left the driver's side door wide open, as if he'd leapt from the vehicle while it was still moving. I pulled in behind it, my headlights cutting through the rain, and killed the engine. The sound of the wind and the lashing rain was deafening. I was too late to stop him. All I could do was watch. Through the rain-slicked windshield I saw him. He was already inside the chain-link fence. The heavy padlock on the gate was not cut. It had been shattered, blown outward as if hit by a hammer from the inside. Mark was at the center of the concrete base, standing directly beneath the immense, soaring lattice of steel. He wasn't cowering from the storm. He was welcoming it. His arms were held slightly out from his sides, his head tilted back, face to the sky. He had the sharpened trenching shovel and the long iron crowbar. He wasn't digging. He was planting them. He raised the crowbar high, a conductor's baton, and with a roar that I heard through the glass, through the wind, he plunged it deep into the soft, rain-soaked earth at the tower's base. Then he did the same with the shovel, driving the sharpened steel tip into the ground, creating a second point of contact. He had created an altar, a circuit. He placed one hand on the cold steel leg of the tower. He placed his other hand on the iron crowbar. He was connecting himself. He was the bridge. No, no, no. I whispered, my hand on the door handle. But I was frozen. I was a spectator watching a god being born. The world went white. It was not a normal lightning strike. It was a spear. A blinding, blue-white column of pure energy left the sky and struck the very top of the antenna. There was no thunder. The sound was instantaneous, a deafening, concussive crack that was more of a physical blow than a noise. The car's electrical system died instantly. The headlights, the interior light, the dashboard, all vanished, plunging me into a primal darkness. My ears rang with a high-pitched, piercing whine. But I could still see him. The tower, the man, the very air around them was lit by an unholy internal fire. The lightning had not grounded. It had been caught. It traveled down the steel lattice, a river of white-hot energy, and it did not go into the earth. It went into Mark. He was illuminated, a terrifying X-ray silhouette. I saw his bones, his skull, his spine, all lit from within. He arched his back, his mouth open in a silent, ecstatic scream. He wasn't being burned, he was absorbing it. He was a living transformer, a vessel for the sky's raw, untamed power. And then the light changed. The brilliant, natural white blue of the lightning was corrupted. It was siphoned, digested, and then spat back out. A wave of energy erupted from his body, not white but a thick, sickly, pulsing green. The same color as the mold on rotting food, the same color as the phosphorescence on deep-sea things that live without light. The green aura pulsed once, twice, and then shot downward into the shovel, into the crowbar, and into the earth. I felt it in the car. A low, subterranean jolt that rattled my teeth. Then, darkness. The light was gone. The tower was just a black shape. The ringing in my ears faded, replaced by the simple, mundane sound of the rain. I looked down at the valley. At our town. It was black. Every light. Every street lamp, every house, every traffic signal, all of it gone. The grid was dead. He had done it. He had taken the sky's power, mixed it with the map's cadence, and injected it directly into the earth, blowing out the entire system. On the ridge, a single sickly green light remained. It was pulsing, faint but steady. It was Mark. He was glowing. He turned slowly. Through the rain, through the darkness, across the distance, he looked directly at me. He knew I was there. He had known all along. He didn't move toward me. He just stood. A new green-lit antenna, broadcasting his new silent frequency into the dead, dark valley. He had awakened the final location. He had sent the invitation. And now he was waiting for the guests to arrive. The green glow on the ridge pulsed, a sickly, artificial heartbeat in the storm. It pulsed for a full minute, a beacon of wrongness, and then it was simply gone. He was gone. I was alone in a dead car at the foot of a dark ridge in a dead town. The rain had slowed to a miserable, cold drizzle. My phone was a useless black rectangle. The car, an advanced model full of electronics, was completely fried. I had to walk home. The walk was miles. It took over an hour, every step in agony from my bruised back. But the pain was secondary to the silence. The town was not just dark, it was entombed. The power outage had killed the low-level hum of civilization. There were no refrigerators cycling, no air conditioners, no distant televisions. The silence was absolute, a thick, suffocating blanket that felt heavier and more terrible than Mark's two-note hum ever had. The hum had been a threat. This was a result. The only sound was my own footsteps on the wet pavement, echoing off the dark, accusing faces of the houses. I felt like the last survivor of an apocalypse I had just witnessed. I reached our street, our house. It was as dark as all the others. I fumbled for my house key, my hands still shaking, my entire body rigid with the expectation of an attack. Was he inside? Was he waiting, glowing green, the sharpened shovel in his hand? I found a heavy-duty flashlight in the kitchen drawer. I gripped it like a club, my thumb on the switch. "Mark?" I called into the darkness. Silence. I flicked on the beam. The kitchen was empty. The living room was empty. The house was cold, but the other cold, the penetrating parasitic chill, was gone. And the smell of damp soil and ozone was gone. The house just smelled like a house. I took a step, then another. The migraine that had lived in my skull for a week was fading. The hollow, chemical sickness in my stomach was easing. I crept toward the study. The door was ajar. I pushed it open, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the dark. He was there. He was sitting in his desk chair, facing the window, his back to me. He was soaking wet, his clothes from the ridge still plastered to his body. He was shivering, his shoulders shaking. He wasn't humming. He wasn't glowing. "Mark?" I whispered, my voice trembling. He turned slowly. I flinched, my hand tightening on the flashlight, ready to see those bright, vacant eyes, the condescending smile of the stillness. But it was him. It was Mark. His face was pale, streaked with rain and dirt. His eyes were his own, confused, terrified, and red-rimmed from weeping. The vibrant, terrible health was gone. He looked exhausted. He looked broken. "Elara," he whispered. His voice was just a single, human, rattling voice. "Oh God, Elara. What happened? What did I do?" I didn't move. The flashlight beam stayed fixed on his face. "What do you remember?" I was at the tower," he stammered, his teeth chattering. "The storm. I had the shovel. I was trying to broadcast." He shook his head, a violent, painful gesture. Then the lightning. It hit. It hit me, Elara. I felt it. It was like being burned alive and frozen solid all at once. He held up his hands. They were raw, red, the skin on his palms blistered from holding the metal. It's gone," he wept, a dry, racking sob. The voice, the hum, the map. It's quiet. My head is quiet. I'm me. This was the trap. Finch's words screamed in my head. He's already gone. But the man in front of me was the man I had married. The hope was so powerful, so painful, it eclipsed the fear. "The map," I said, my voice hard. "Where is it?" "It's gone," he said, pointing to the metal fireplace insert across the room. "When the lightning hit me, I was still holding it. It caught fire. It burned. It turned to ash. Look." I walked over. In the grate, there was a pile of fine, black, greasy ash. It looked wrong, but it was ash. He had lied about it being in his bag. Or had he? "It's over, Elara," he said, standing up, his legs unsteady. He looked at me, his eyes full of a desperate, pleading truth. "I'm so sorry. I hurt you. In the garage." "I didn't." "It did." He didn't come near me, as if afraid I would flinch. "I'm me," he whispered again, as if trying to convince himself. I wanted to believe it. God, how I wanted to. What do we do now?" He ran his blistered hands through his wet hair. It's over, but I have to be sure. I can't get it out of my head. The place it was sending me. The extent. My blood ran cold. "It's an empty field, right?" he said, his voice rising in a desperate, pleading tone. "Out past the quarry. The land I was supposed to survey." He grabbed my arms and his hands were warm. Not cold. Warm. "I need you to come with me, Elara. Please. I need you to stand there with me in that empty field and see that it's nothing. I need you to see it so I can know it's really gone. So I can believe I'm free." He was manipulating me. I knew it. But he was using the one thing I couldn't fight. My own desperate need for this to be over. "Mark, it's the middle of the night. The town is dark. The storm. It has to be now," he insisted, his grip tightening. While it's dead. While the connection is broken. I can't stay here. I'll go mad thinking it's still waiting. Please, we'll take the truck. It'll run. It's old, it's all mechanical. It'll be the last time. I promise. Then we can go. We can leave this town forever. He was offering me my life back. All I had to do was go to an empty field. I looked at his face, the face I had loved for a decade, now a mask of trauma and hope. Okay, I whispered, the word of betrayal of every instinct I had. Okay, Mark, we'll go. We'll go and see the empty field. He slumped in relief, his forehead resting on mine. Thank you, he breathed. He pulled back, his eyes clear and relieved. He even gave me a weak, watery smile. Go on, he said, gesturing to the door. Grab your jacket. Oh, I'll just be a second. I need to get something. Something? My boots, he said, his smile reassuring. Can't go to a field in my socks. I nodded, my heart aching with a fragile, toxic relief. I turned and walked to the hall closet. I heard him move back into the study. I was pulling on my rain jacket when I heard, from the study, the quiet, metallic shing of a whetstone. He wasn't putting on his boots. He was retrieving the sharpened shovel he had hidden there, the one I'd failed to find. He had lied. The map wasn't Ash. The man in the chair wasn't Mark. My hand was on the front doorknob. Run, my mind screamed. Run now. Run and don't look back. But he was already in the hallway. Ready? He asked, his voice bright. He had no shovel in his hands. He was just Mark, smiling, keys in hand. I had imagined it. The sound. I had to have. I was exhausted. I was traumatized. It was a false memory. Ready? I lied, my voice a dead thing. I followed him out the door into the black, silent night. Mark's old truck, a '93 mechanical beast with no computers to fry, turned over with a wet, gasping cough before rumbling to life. Its headlights cut two weak yellow cones into the oppressive darkness. The silence of the dead town pressed in around us as we drove. It felt like we were the only two people left alive, driving through a city of ghosts. Mark was a perfect imitation of his old self. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other tapping a nervous, tuneless rhythm on the dashboard. He was talkative, his words spilling out in a rush of relief and self-recrimination. I can't believe I let it get me like that, Alara, he said, his voice sounding small and tinny in the cab. It felt like drowning. Like I was at the bottom of a cold, dark ocean and I could see the surface but I couldn't move. And I could feel it, using my hands, using my voice. It's over now, Mark, I said. My voice was a dead, flat thing. I was sitting pressed against the passenger door, my hand clutching the cold, metal handle. I know it is. God, the things I did. The pull. The tower. I could have killed people. I could have killed you. He glanced at me, his eyes full of a perfect, practiced remorse. When we see this field, Alara, when we see it's just dirt, it'll be real. It'll be the end. A period at the end of the nightmare. I stared out the window. The nightmare wasn't over. I had heard the shing of the whetstone. I knew it. But the Mark beside me was so flawless in his performance that he was sowing doubt in my own sanity. Had I imagined it? Was I the one who was lost, so consumed by the terror of the past week that I couldn't recognize my own husband return to me? My hope was a small, fluttering bird in my chest, and my dread was the python coiling around it. He drove us out of the subdivision, past the dead, dark strip malls, past the highway interchange and onto the old quarry road. The pavement gave way to gravel, the sound of the tires crunching stones abnormally loud in the silent world. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, saturated, and cold. It's just up here, he said, his voice tight. The old easement for the Halcyon project. The one that went bankrupt. He turned the truck onto a barely there path, two ruts in the high grass. The truck's chassis scraped against the earth. The headlights illuminated a landscape of raw, undeveloped land, scrub oak, tall weeds, and mounds of excavated rock. We broke through a line of trees and the truck's headlights found the X. It wasn't a field. It was a scar. We had stopped at the edge of a perfect, circular depression in the earth. It was a basin, perhaps 100 yards across, as if a giant's thumb had pressed down into the world, compacting the soil. It was a place of profound, sickening wrongness. Nothing grew there. Not a weed, not a blade of grass, not a patch of moss. The land outside the circle was riotous with overgrown life. But inside the perimeter, there was only dark, bare, compacted earth, glistening wetly in the headlights. The air that rolled from it and into the truck's open windows was not the fresh smell of rain-washed night. It was the smell from the map. That cold, subterranean odor of ozone, rust, and damp, sunless decay. My fragile hope shattered. The python crushed the bird. I had not imagined the whetstone. This was not an empty field. This was the lid. Mark killed the engine. The sudden silence was absolute. The headlights remained on, painting the unnatural basin in a stark, theatrical glare. "See," he whispered, his voice trembling. But the tremor was not from fear. It was from excitement. "It's nothing. It's just an empty lot. Just geology. A sinkhole maybe." He opened his door. "Come on. Let's stand in the middle. Let's prove it's just dirt." "No," I said, my voice finally my own. "I'm not getting out of the truck, Mark." He paused, his hand on the open door, his back to me. "What?" "Alara, this is it. This is the last step. We have to confront it." "You're lying," I whispered. My hand fumbled behind me for the door handle. It was locked. He must have hit the master lock when he killed the engine. "Lying?" He laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Alara, you're not making sense. I'm free. We're free. The map is gone. I heard you. In the study. I heard the whetstone. Where is the shovel, Mark?" He stood perfectly still for a long, terrible moment. The only sound was a faint ticking from the truck's cooling engine. "Oh," he said. His voice lost all its warmth, all its strained, human emotion. It became flat, clear, and cold. "That's a pity. We really hoped you would come willingly." He turned, and the man I married was gone forever. The thing wearing his face was smiling, its eyes bright with that vibrant, terrible, inhuman light. "It wasn't in the study," he said, his voice dropping into the familiar layered two-note hum. "It was in the truck bed. It's been waiting." He reached under the driver's seat and his hand emerged, not with a key but with the map. It was not burned. It was not ash. It was pristine, damp, and pulsing, a faint oily light of its own, mirroring the sickly green of the tower. "It didn't burn," it said, caressing the vellum. "Fire is surface. Fire is noise. Just slept." The lightning was the alarm clock. It woke us all up. "You're not Mark." "I am more than Mark," the thing corrected, its layered voice filling the cab, making the windows vibrate. "Mark was the key. He was the perfect key. And he opened the locks, one by one. The transformer. The pole. The antenna. He did such good work. And now, we're at the door." He got out of the truck, taking the map with him. He walked around to my side. I was hammering the unlock button, but it was dead. The truck's battery, like the car, had finally given in to the energy he was radiating. He stood outside my window, smiling his cold, patient smile. "This is it, Alara," he said. "This is the X. This is the meeting place. And it's so hungry." He didn't try to open my door. He just walked away toward the center of the dark, sterile basin. He was walking toward something I couldn't see. And then I heard it. A scraping sound. From the truck bed just behind my head. Scrape. Thud. A shape appeared in my peripheral vision walking past the truck. It was Mark. But Mark was already 50 feet away, walking into the basin. My head snapped back. The Mark with the map was still there, halfway to the center. And another Mark, this one dressed in his work clothes, the ones I hadn't seen him in for days, was walking from the back of the truck, holding the sharpened, glinting shovel. My mind broke. There were two of them. No. I looked again. The Mark with the map, the one in the center of the field, was fading. He was translucent, a projection. He was a lure. The real Mark, the shell, had been in the truck bed all along, waiting. He walked past my door, his face a mask of ecstatic, mindless purpose, his eyes completely white. He didn't even look at me. He was following the projection, the map's light, walking to the very center of the lid. "This is it," the Mark in the field said, his voice echoing from all around me. "This is the lid." And the Mark with the shovel raised it high, not to dig but to strike. I slammed my shoulder against the truck door, rattling the glass in its frame. The lock was solid, a dead, mechanical piece of steel. I was sealed in. I was a witness, trapped in a box, forced to watch the finale. The two Marks, the illusion and the vessel, moved toward the center of the basin. The projection, map Mark, was a shimmering, translucent thing, lit from within by that sick, green-tinged light from the tower. He held the pulsing map aloft, a lantern guiding them in. The shell Mark, my husband, was an automaton. His movements were stiff, his eyes milky and vacant, the sharpened shovel held at a perfect, disciplined angle at his side. He was the weapon. They stopped at the basin's exact geometric center. The projection turned to face the shell. And then the projection turned and looked right at me. It smiled. "You're right, Alara," its voice said. The sound was everywhere. It was in the cab, in the air, in my bones. It was the layered, two-note voice of the stillness. "There is no treasure chest. There is no gold. We are not here to dig." The shell Mark stood utterly still, his head bowed, awaiting his command. "There is only the door," the voice continued, its tone one of patient, academic explanation. "We were trapped, you see. So deep. So hungry. The old wards, the old noise of the surface, they were strong. But the key was always the problem. We couldn't build it from down here. We had to grow it on the crust." A sickening realization bloomed in my chest, cold and complete. He wasn't here to dig. He was the key. "The feeding," the voice explained as if to a child. "The transformer, the nerves. The pool, the mouth. The antenna, the voice." Mark's obsession, his logic, his energy, it all worked to recalibrate the key, to attune it, to empty it of the noise of his own self. The projection looked at the shell with a horrible, proprietary pride. "It is a beautiful key, perfectly attuned, perfectly empty. But," the voice said, "a key is useless unless it is turned in the lock. And this lock requires a final offering, a new surveyor, a sacrifice of the highest order. The one who opened the way must become the way." The projection raised its glowing hand. In perfect, terrifying mimicry, the shell Mark raised the sharpened shovel. "Mark, no!" I screamed, my voice cracking, my fists beating uselessly against the safety glass. "Wake up, please." He didn't raise it to strike the earth. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the projection, his face a mask of serene, ecstatic emptiness. With a smooth, powerful, mechanical motion, the motion of a surveyor driving a stake into the ground, the shell turned the shovel, reversing it in his grip. He held the thick wooden handle with both hands, aimed the glinting, sharpened steel point at his own solar plexus, and with all the force in his body drove it upward. There was no scream. There was no grunt of pain. There was only a thick, wet, pneumatic hiss like a tire being punctured. The shovel blade vanished, sinking hilt deep into his own chest. The shell's knees buckled. His eyes, for one brief, agonizing second, cleared. They focused. He looked surprised. He looked human. He fell. Not backward. He toppled forward like a cut tree onto the dark, bare earth. The force of his fall, combined with his weight, drove the shovel's blade clean through his body and deep into the lid of the earth beneath him. He had impaled himself. He had pinned his own body to the center of the X, a human railroad spike. The projection map Mark smiled. It bent down and gently laid the pulsing vellum and bronze map onto the back of the dying shell. It was a burial shroud. "The key is in the lock," the voice whispered. "The offering is accepted." The projection flickered once, its job done, and vanished like a snuffed flame. Mark was alone. He twitched. And then the ground beneath him began to move. It wasn't soil. It was a thick, black, oily substance, bubbling up from where the shovel had pierced the ground. It was churning. It rose up, climbing the wooden handle, enveloping Mark's boots, his legs. It was eating him. The map dissolved first, melting like wax. Then the shovel. Then my husband. His hand, the one that used to hold mine, twitched, reaching for nothing as the black, viscid mire pulled it under. In seconds he was gone. The shovel was gone. The map was gone. There was nothing left at the center of the basin but a dark, bubbling, circular pool of liquid earth. A low, powerful thrum began. It was not a hum. It was a pulse, a slow, subterranean heartbeat. The truck began to shake. And as the last trace of Mark vanished into the earth, the master lock on the truck door snapped open with a loud, metallic click. The stillness had released me. It wasn't an act of mercy. It was an act of dismissal. My part was over. I was irrelevant. I didn't wait. I threw the door open, my feet hitting the gravel. I didn't look back. I ran. I ran. I ran until my lungs felt like they were full of acid and the bruises on my back were a single, throbbing fire. I didn't run to anything. I ran from. I scrambled over the gravel mounds, tore through the scrub oaks, my feet slipping in the wet, dark soil of the crust. Behind me I heard a sound. It was not an explosion. It was a release. A deep, subterranean thump, followed by a massive, wet tearing sound, like a mountain of damp canvas being ripped in two. A moment later, a geyser. I didn't see it, but I heard the patter, a heavy rain of thick, oily mud and dark, pulpy matter falling back to the earth, splattering on the leaves of the trees around me. The thing in the basin, the stillness, had breached the surface. It had been uncorked. I never looked back. To look back was to be seen. To be seen was to be re-invited. I reached the dead truck, still parked on the quarry road. It was useless to me, a tomb of dead electronics. My only way out was on foot. I ran down the gravel road, my boots crunching, the sound obscenely loud in the new vibrating silence of the world. The earth was thrumming. It was no longer a localized phenomenon, no longer a hum I felt in my teeth or in the floorboards. The planet was vibrating. The ground beneath my feet was alive with that low, resonant, two-note cadence. Mark's song had become the world's. I reached the edge of town as the sky in the east began to bruise, leaking a faint, sickly gray light. The darkness was receding, but the silence held. The town was a graveyard. But as I ran down the center of Sycamore Lane, past the dead transformer Mark had opened, I realized the silence wasn't empty. It was listening. The houses, dark and eyeless, seemed to be holding their breath. I had the terrible, overwhelming sensation that if I stopped, if I made a sound, something would look out of those dark windows. Not a person. Something that had just arrived. I saw the first sign of the other world, the crust, near the highway interchange. Flashing lights. Red and blue, cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. Police, ambulances, National Guard. I ran toward them, weeping, waving my arms, a half-mad survivor. Help. Please help me. But they weren't coming in. They were forming a perimeter out. A soldier in full fatigue saw me stumble out of the darkness of the access road. He raised his rifle, his face pale and tight behind a rain-slicked helmet. "Ma'am, stop. Stop right there. Get on the ground." My town," I gasped, falling to my knees on the wet asphalt. "The power, my husband is anyone with you?" he shouted, his voice tight with an adrenaline I didn't understand. He wasn't scared of me, he was scared of where I'd come from. "No, I'm alone. The whole town, the power is out." Another soldier joined him. "We know, ma'am. The whole valley's dark." He grabbed my arm, his grip hard, and hauled me to my feet. He wasn't rescuing me, he was processing me. He dragged me toward a waiting ambulance, away from the town. "What's happening?" I pleaded. "Geological event, ma'am," he said, his words rote, rehearsed. "Catastrophic, localized subsidence. The whole basin, it's unstable. We're evacuating." "Subsidence?" I said, my mind numb. "It's sinking, ma'am," the first soldier said, his eyes wide as he looked past me toward the town I had just fled. "The whole damn town. It's just sinking." He was right. I turned. The sun was just beginning to touch the highest point of the ridge, illuminating the antenna Mark had used. The skeletal tower, our beacon to the world, was tilting. It was leaning like a dying tree, as the very earth it was anchored to gave way beneath it. The ground was sinking. Weeks passed. Or maybe it was months. Time became a flat circle, measured in the shuffling of anonymous motel carpets and the hum of vending machines. I am in a room in Flagstaff. Or maybe it's Tulsa. It doesn't matter. It's hundreds of miles away. I am Ilara, but I am also Jane, and Sarah, and whatever name I wrote on the motel register. My town is gone. I read the news on the flickering monitor of a public library computer. It's a national story, a geological freak show. The Oak Valley subsidence. A perfectly circular 10-mile-wide sinkhole that had, in the space of 72 hours, swallowed the entire town. The houses, the streets, the community pool, the ridge, the antenna. All of it gone. Pulled down. They called it a geological enigma. They blamed aquifers, fracking, a dormant supervolcano. They showed satellite photos of a vast, dark, circular scar on the earth. A perfectly round, black hole where my life used to be. The government has declared it a national exclusion zone. The air, they say, is toxic with subterranean gases. The ground is fatally unstable. No one goes in. Nothing comes out. They don't know the truth. It wasn't unstable. It was hungry. It wasn't subsidence. It was digestion. I am the only one who knows. I am the only one who saw the key turn in the lock. I am the only one who knows that the stillness, the sapient hunger, is free. I am back in my motel room. The walls are thin. I can hear the couple next door arguing, the sound of a truck on the highway. The noise. The beautiful, precious, temporary noise of the crust. The motel phone on the nightstand rings. My heart stops. It rings again, a shrill, plastic demand. I haven't given this number to anyone. I have no one to give it to. I pick it up, my hand shaking. Hello. There is no voice. There is no static. There is only a profound, bottomless silence. And then, I hear it. It's faint, but it's unmistakable. It's the sound from the map. The sound of my husband. A low, two-note hum, the cadence of the deep earth. It's not in my head. It's coming through the phone. I am about to slam the receiver down to rip the cord from the wall, when a new sound joins the hum. It's a soft, wet, rhythmic sound. It's the sound of a shovel. It's the sound of digging. The hum is the signal. The digging is the work. It's tunneling. It's looking. It knows the frequency of the static that got away. The digging isn't distant. It isn't hundreds of miles away in a quarantine sinkhole. It sounds like it's just outside the door. It sounds like it's getting closer.